But up next on this show, the Trump-Kanye revolution coming to a screen near you and a country that you might be in right now.
Won't even get pulled over in they new feed. The good life. Let's go on a living spree. They say the best thing.
Trump, but then he get in the office and now they don't love him. Like, Trump is one of rap's favorite people.
Kanye West must have some power because you probably saw I doubled my African American poll numbers. We went from 11 to 22 in 1 week. Thank you, Kanye.
Kanye West, Donald Trump revolution continues. West professing his love for President Trump, as you just heard on TMZ, hitting President Obama for failing Chicago and saying this about slavery.
You hear about slavery for 400 years. For 400 years, that sounds like a choice. Like, you was there for 400 years and it's all of y'all? You know, like, it's like we're mentally in prison. I like the word prison because slavery goes too direct to the idea of blacks. So prison is something that unites us as one race, blacks and whites being one race, that we're the human race.
So it set the internet on fire this week, but it won't be the last we hear from Kanye. Get this. The president reportedly agreeing to host a White House summit on race with him and other athletes, as well as some artists and maybe some others in between. Joining us right now, Fox News political analyst Gianno Caldwell and political commentator extraordinaire Wendy Osefo. What a week it's been for race. A bit of a surprise that Kanye West is leading it. Wendy, for you, what do you get out of this dialogue, and would you like to see it continue at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue?
Well, I think that the dialogue that Kanye West is perpetuating is very, very dangerous, and we have to underscore that. For him to sit here and say slavery was a choice is one that just negates all of history and all of the evidence of history. Slavery was not a choice, and if he's talking about mental slavery, then there are individuals, if you look at history, like Nat Turner, like Harriet Tubman, who rebelled against slavery. So he has no foundational basis for this argument. Furthermore, if we're going to have a summit about race at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, that'll be a great thing. But for the life of me, I do not understand why every time we come to issues affecting black and brown people, we bring together athletes, we bring together artists. Why is it that we do not bring together scholars who are known in this field, whether it's Dr. Michael Eric Dyson, Dr. Greg Hart, Dr. Imani Perry, Dr. Mark Lamont Hill? There are individuals who have studied race, who have studied politics. We are not minstrel shows, and we should not be represented by individuals who are not versed in this space.
Great point. And if it's athletes and artists, it's a virtual waste of time. Gianno, first off, your reaction to Kanye's comments.
Well, of course, I agree with Wendy. Slavery was not a choice, and I can also speak to the individuals who did make choices to free themselves. We talk about the 250 rebellions that took place, including Nat Turner, including Harriet Tubman, who led free over 1,000 slaves, and those that freed themselves from many plantations across the country. So I get that. What I can say in terms of this imprisonment that Kanye talked about in terms of mentally, there are a lot of people who are mentally imprisoned. We live in a blaming generation right now where people are quick to blame history as to why they're not succeeding. And I think that's problematic on many levels. I think at the end of the day, we do live in a country where we can create our own opportunities and do well. Now, that doesn't excuse any systems of institutional racism that seeks to hold us back. I get that, but that's not going to prevent people like Dr. Wendy Osefo from succeeding, who is an immigrant, who works as a professor at one of the leading institutions, who sits on Fox News Channel on air, the #1 cable news network in the country, almost every night. Or myself, who was born into poverty, whose mom was addicted to crack cocaine. But yet and still, here I am having this conversation with you two very distinguished individuals. So I think at the end of the day that we take this into our own hands. Nothing and no one can stop you but yourself.
Wendy, I think Gianno, you put a strong argument using both your backgrounds is, hey, we're not saying the playing field was equal. We're not saying that we're proud of what happened 150 years ago. But having said that, this is the playing field, and let's be successful. Don't use it as an excuse. How can you say that, Wendy, and not be racially insensitive?
Well, you could say that by also knowing the policies that make it so that there's hurdles that even though we are 150 years removed from slavery, there are still issues that plague people in communities of color, and communities that have low socioeconomic backgrounds. I quote the great Dr. Martin Luther King that says we have this notion in our country that individuals should pull themselves up from their bootstraps, but these individuals do not have any boots. So we have to make sure that we are looking at things in context and not saying everyone should rise to the playing field, but we have policies that make it so certain people are not able to, and that's really important.
Excellent. So let me first off, what do you think, Gianno? First, you should this be televised?
I think it's an element of it should be televised. I reached out to Pastor Darrell Scott. I actually had a conversation with him a couple of days ago talking about the summit and my involvement with it personally. This is something that I've been calling for a very long time. Wendy and I had sat on television when we talked about Charlottesville and had that very emotional segment where I called for a summit on race. I think this is something that needed to be done a very long time ago, but now there's voices that are coming to the table. Wendy had a very good point. You need to bring all voices to the table, whether we agree or not, because at this point we spend a lot of time talking past each other versus talking with each other. And although people don't like the president, and some rightfully so, they may not like what he says or does, and we get that, but at this particular point in our country, we really need to have a serious conversation on race and how can we better move together and work together. And I think that's why the Kanye West dynamic is so powerful. Although I may not agree with everything he says, he has at least opened up a conversation where people, especially in the celebrity caliber, aren't just shooting him down. They're saying, okay, we may disagree with them, but we're listening.
Wendy, and finally, just who do you want to make sure is there? I want you there. Gianno, I want you there. Wendy, who do you want to bring with you?
I want to make sure, absolutely, myself and Gianno are going to be there. I want to bring Dr. Mark Lamont Hill to the conversation. I want to bring Dr. Greg Hart to the conversation. I want to bring Dr. Michelle Alexander to the conversation. I want to make sure that scholars about race, about policies are at the table.
I think that's great, and it's a great idea, as long as everyone says, I will listen, not just talk.
Yeah.
If people will listen and make it just phase one of a series of conferences and keep politics out of it.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I hope this happens. You know, Gianno, Wendy has moved that conversation forward. Let's move ahead. Is